Sisters Kitty and Cookie are now at the center of a shocking new twist in their mom's brutal murder case. But while everyone is talking about the headlines, one detail in the police timeline may change the whole story. So, in this video, we're going to break down the timeline, the detail people are missing, and why this new twist could completely change how we look at the case. Because at first, this case looks like something people can judge quickly. You see the headline, you see the names, you see the arrest footage, you see the public reaction. And right away, people start choosing sides before the full story is even laid out. Some people look at Kitty and Cookie and say the case is already clear. They point to the reported doorbell footage. They point to the clothing change. They point to the shower. They point to the way one of the sisters appeared during the arrest. And to them, all of it tells one story. These were not people acting confused. These were people who knew something serious had happened. But then there is the other side. The other side may say the public is moving too fast. They may say a short clip does not show everything. They may say a camera can capture the middle of a confrontation without explaining what started it. They may argue that panic can look strange, fear can look cold, and a bad reaction after a terrible moment does not always explain what was going through someone's mind. And that is where this case becomes more complicated. Because the real question is not just what happened in front of that camera. The real question is what the timeline proves. Was this a chaotic confrontation that went too far? Or does what happened after the incident show something more calculated? Think about that. Police were not only looking at the moment Caro Pena was hurt, they were looking at what happened after. Who left? Who changed clothes? Who washed up? Who stayed quiet? Who tried to explain their side? And who looked like they already understood the seriousness of what had happened. That is the part people may be missing. This case is not only about what happened in the street, it is about what happened before, what happened during, and most importantly, what happened after. Before this case became a headline, Caro Pena was a real person with a real family. She was 32 years old, a mother of five, and from the outside, her life looked like the kind of life people scroll past every day without thinking anything dark is coming. There were family moments, videos near the water, ordinary posts, the kind of memories people share because they want to hold on to a good day, a funny moment, or a simple piece of life with the people they love. And that is what makes this case feel so heavy. Because behind every court document, every police report, and every arrest clip, there is a mother who had children waiting for her. There is a family that did not wake up that morning expecting their lives to change forever. But on Thursday, June 25th, in Del Rio, Texas, everything changed. This was not something that happened far away from everyone. It was not hidden in some quiet place where nobody could see or hear anything. It happened in daylight, in a neighborhood setting close enough for a doorbell camera to capture key parts of what unfolded. Think about how normal that kind of setting is. A street, a home, cars pulling up, people nearby. A regular day that suddenly turns into something people would later study second by second. And at the center of it were three women police say Caro already knew. Kitty Diaz, Cookie Diaz, also known as Amaya in some documents, and Kyandra Faz. That detail matters because police have not described this as a random encounter with strangers. This was personal in some way. There was already some kind of connection between them, even if the full motive has not been made public. And that changes the whole feeling of the story, because when people know each other, the question becomes deeper. What was already going on before that day? Was there an argument, a grudge, a misunderstanding, something that had been building for a while? Right now, the public does not have that full answer. But that is exactly why the timeline matters. Because if Caro knew them and they knew her, then the biggest question is this: what happened before the camera started recording? Del Rio, Texas was not supposed to become the center of a case like this. It was daylight, a normal neighborhood, a regular street, the kind of place where people pull into driveways, walk past front doors, and go on with their day without expecting anything serious to happen right outside a home. But that is what makes this part of the timeline so important. According to the police timeline, Caro Pena arrived first in a black pickup truck. The location was reportedly near where Kyandra Faz lived. So, From the beginning, this was not described as a random meeting in some unknown place. Caro showed up at a location connected to someone already tied to the case, and this is where one version of the story begins. Kyandra Faz reportedly claimed that Caro came there looking for a fight. Now, that does not mean the claim is automatically true. It is only one version of what may have happened before the situation turned serious. But it matters because if this case reaches trial, the defense may point to that detail and say, wait a minute, this did not begin out of nowhere. They may ask the jury to think about what was happening before the camera captured the part everyone is focused on. Was Caro upset? Was there already tension? Was someone expecting her? Was this a confrontation that had been building before she even arrived? Those questions matter because the camera can show what happened in front of it, but it cannot always explain what led people to that exact moment. Then, according to the timeline, another vehicle pulled up, a black Chrysler. And that is when Kitty and Cookie entered the scene. This is the moment the story shifts. What may have started as one possible argument now became something bigger. The sisters stepped out of the vehicle and moved toward Caro. And from there, the pressure around the scene changed fast. You can almost feel how quickly a normal street can become tense. One vehicle already there, another one pulling in, people stepping out, words possibly being exchanged, movement, emotion. Everyone close enough for things to escalate before anyone has time to slow it down. And then there was the doorbell camera. That camera matters because it does not rely on memory, fear, anger, or what someone wants the story to sound like later. It gives police a timeline they can study frame by frame. But even that video may not answer everything. It may show who arrived, who moved toward Caro, and who became involved. But it also creates new questions. Who came prepared? Who joined in? And who understood how far this moment could go? The situation turned physical very quickly. According to investigators, this was no longer just words being exchanged in a neighborhood. It was no longer just an argument outside a home. The tension had already crossed into something more serious, and the doorbell camera became one of the key pieces police would later use to understand what happened. Police reportedly observed Cookie holding what appeared to be a weapon. She was described as wearing a red tank top and blue jeans. Kitty was reportedly seen wearing a pink tank top. And those clothing details may sound small at first, but they become very important later. Because this case is not only about what happened in that moment, it is also about what police say happened afterward. So when investigators note what the sisters were wearing during the confrontation, that detail later connects directly to the 2-hour window everyone is now questioning. According to police, Cookie was the person who used the weapon during the confrontation. But investigators also say Kitty and Kyandra were physically involved as well. And this is where the case becomes more complicated. Because the public may focus on one question first: who had the weapon? That is the question most people naturally ask. But prosecutors may look at it differently. They may ask who was involved in the confrontation as a whole, who moved toward Caro, who helped create the pressure around her, who continued the physical encounter once things became serious. That difference matters, because in court, this may not only be about the person accused of using the weapon, it may also be about whether the group acted together in a way that made the final outcome possible. And for Caro, the result was devastating. She suffered severe trauma and needed emergency medical care. What started as a neighborhood confrontation quickly became a life-threatening emergency. Within moments, this was no longer about rumors, tension, or whatever history existed between them. This became a case with police, hospital staff, grieving loved ones, and serious charges. And at the center of it all was Caro Pena, a 32-year-old mother of 5. That is the part that should not get lost in the timeline. Behind every detail police wrote down, behind every piece of footage, behind every court document, there was a family waiting for answers. But the moment itself was only the first part of the case. What happened after may be the detail everyone missed. Police do not have to build this case only on emotion. They do not have to depend only on what people felt when they saw the arrest clip. They do not have to depend only on online reaction, rumors, or public anger. According to the reported timeline, they have something more concrete. They have footage, they have vehicle details, they have clothing descriptions, they have hospital timing, and they have the suspect's movements after the incident. That is why side A of this case may feel so strong. From the prosecution's view, this was not just panic. This was not just three people scared after a confrontation went too far. They may argue the timeline shows awareness. Break it down slowly. Caro arrived first in a black pickup truck. Then the black Chrysler arrived. Kitty and Cookie got out. The confrontation happened. Caro was seriously hurt. And then, according to police, the suspects left the scene. That alone already raises questions. But the timeline does not stop there. Police later tracked the Diaz sisters to a home on the other side of the city. Cookie's black Chrysler was reportedly outside, so the vehicle from the scene was now connected to where the sisters were found. But then investigators noticed something else. The sisters were no longer dressed the way they appeared in the doorbell footage. Remember, police reportedly
Part of me
described
got ripped
Cookie as
out,
wearing a
and
red tank top and blue
that's
jeans
something that
during
I'm
the
not going to get back.
confrontation. Kitty was
He can still
reportedly
see.
seen in a pink tank top. Those details may have sounded small earlier, but now they become important because when officers found them, those same clothes were reportedly no longer on them. And then came the detail that changes the way the timeline looks. Their hair was reportedly wet. Think about that. In a case like this, investigators may see wet hair, changed clothes, and a short time gap as more than a coincidence. They may argue it suggests the sisters showered and changed after the incident. And in a close physical confrontation, clothing can matter, skin can matter, small traces can matter. What someone is wearing can become evidence. So if clothing is changed and someone appears to have washed up soon after, prosecutors may frame that as an attempt to remove or hide evidence. That does not automatically prove guilt by itself, but it gives prosecutors a powerful argument because they can ask the jury one simple question. If this was only panic, why leave, change clothes, and clean up so quickly? That 2-hour window could become one of the most important parts of the whole case. The arrest video did not create the case, but it did change how many people felt about it. According to reports, a citizen recorded video showed Cookie being taken into custody after police located the sisters. And once that video started spreading, the public reaction was immediate. People were not just looking at an arrest anymore. They were looking at her face. They were looking at her body language. They were listening to what she appeared to say. And what upset many viewers was that she seemed to smile and joke while law enforcement escorted her away. Now, to the public, that moment felt hard to process because at that same time, Caro Pena was still fighting for her life. Her family was still waiting for answers. Doctors were still trying to save her. And here was one of the people tied to the case appearing calm, almost playful during the arrest. That is why the video hit people so strongly. But this is where we have to slow down. A smile is not a confession. A joke does not explain motive. And strange behavior after a serious incident does not always tell us exactly what someone was thinking. Some people cry when they are scared. Some people freeze. Some people act numb. Some people react in ways that look cold from the outside, even when the inside story is more complicated. But even with that said, prosecutors may still use that video to shape the way a jury sees the timeline. They may argue it shows a lack of shock, a lack of concern, a lack of visible emotion after something extremely serious had just happened. And if the public image of Kitty and Cookie was different online, especially if Kitty's social media
Part of me
showed
got
her as
ripped
a
out,
devoted
and
mother, that
that's something that
contrast
I'm
may
not going to
become
get back.
even more powerful. Because then the jury is not just looking at what happened, they are looking at who these women appeared to be before and how they appeared to act after. So ask yourself this as if you were sitting in that jury box. Would that arrest video affect how you saw the case? Or would you force yourself to separate emotion from proof? Public outrage can shape a conversation, but inside court, the question is still what the evidence can actually prove. But then the other side asks the jury to look closer, because from the defense side, this case may look different when you stop watching the most emotional pieces over and over again. They may say the public has already judged Kitty, Cookie, and Kyandra based on the parts that feel the loudest. The doorbell footage, the arrest video, the changed clothes, the wet hair, the public reaction online, and yes, those details matter. Nobody can pretend they do not. But the defense may argue that those details still do not tell the full story, because a doorbell camera can show what happened in front of it, but it may not show what happened before Caro arrived. What was said earlier that day? Was there an ongoing dispute? Had threats been made? Was Caro angry when she came there? Was anyone scared? Was this already tense before the camera ever became important? Those are the kinds of questions the other side may put in front of a jury. They may say the
Bubbly
video gives
person,
police a
he just
timeline,
had
but
this
it does not
infectious
give the
laugh.
full
Zelina
emotional
Ochoa
background.
says
It
she
does
and
not
Caro
show
met.
every phone call, every message, every argument, or every reason someone may have felt pressured in that moment. And then there is the 2 hour window. Prosecutors may look at the changed clothes and wet hair and say it shows awareness. They may say it looks like an attempt to remove evidence, but the defense may say, not so fast. They may argue that panic can make people do strange things. Maybe the sisters were afraid. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they did not fully understand how serious Caro's condition was yet. Maybe they were reacting like young women caught in chaos, not like people carefully planning what to do next. That does not erase the seriousness of what happened. It does not answer every question, but it gives the defense a way to challenge what the timeline really proves. Then there is another major issue: each person's role. If Cookie is accused of using the weapon, what exactly did Kitty know before it happened? What exactly did Kyandra intend? Did everyone understand the same danger at the same time? Or did one person's actions suddenly push the whole situation into something much worse? That question matters because Texas law can hold people responsible as a group, but the court still has to look at actions, intent, and participation. So the real question becomes this: does being present and involved mean everyone shared the same responsibility, or does the evidence need to prove more? The reason all three women could face the same serious charge comes down to one legal idea. In Texas, it is called the law of parties. In simple words, it means a person does not always have to be the one who directly causes the final harm to be held responsible. If prosecutors can prove that a group acted together during a crime, the law may allow the court to treat more than one person as responsible for what happened. And that is why this case is bigger than one question. Because a lot of people online may look at it and say, okay, who had the weapon? That is the question most people focus on first. But prosecutors may ask something different. They may ask, who helped create the confrontation? Who was physically involved? Who stayed in it once the situation became serious? And did the group's actions lead to the final outcome? So when prosecutors look at Kitty and Chandra, they may argue they were not just standing nearby. They may say if the footage shows them physically involved while Caro was seriously hurt, then their actions connect them to the same result under Texas law. That is what makes the law of parties so powerful. It can take a case that looks like one person's direct action and turn it into a group responsibility case. But this is also where the legal gray area comes in. The defense may argue that not everyone had the same intent. Not everyone knew a weapon would be used. Not everyone understood the same risk at the same moment. And not everyone should automatically be treated exactly the same just because they were there. That is the part a jury may have to wrestle with. Do you focus on the final outcome, or do you separate each person's actions second by second? Because those are two very different ways of looking at the same evidence. And then the timeline comes back again. The 2 hour window may not only affect Cookie, it may also affect how investigators view both sisters' state of mind after the incident. If they changed clothes, if they washed up, if they left the scene, prosecutors may argue those choices show awareness, but awareness still has to be proven through evidence. The law may allow prosecutors to group them together, but the evidence still has to carry that weight. By 9 p.m. that night, Caro Pena had lost her life in San Antonio. And no matter how people argue about the footage, the timeline, the arrest video, or what happened before the camera started recording, that is the part that cannot be pushed aside. A mother of 5 was gone. Her children lost their mother. Her family was left with grief. And what started as a confrontation in a Del Rio neighborhood had now become a case built around footage, statements, clothing, timing, and what investigators believe they can prove. But even after all of that, the timeline still has not answered everything. One side may say the evidence points in one clear direction. They may say Caro arrived, the black Chrysler pulled up, the confrontation happened, and then the suspects left. They may say the changed clothes and wet hair matter because they suggest something more than panic. They may argue the 2 hour window shows awareness and maybe even an attempt to hide evidence. And when you look at it that way, side A sounds strong. But the other side may say the public still does not know the full context. They may say the doorbell camera shows part of the story, not the whole story. They may say the arrest video may feel upsetting, but it does not prove intent by itself. They may say a fast, emotional situation can look completely different when it is slowed down in court and studied frame by frame. And that is where the case remains unresolved. The motive has not been fully explained publicly. The full evidence has not been tested in front of a jury. The footage matters, but it may not answer every question. The timeline matters, but each part still has to be proven. So now the real question is this: was this a planned group act, a confrontation that spiraled out of control, or something in between? And when a jury looks at the 2 hour window, the changed clothes, the wet hair, and the footage, will they see panic or will they see consciousness of guilt? Tell me what you think the timeline really proves. But remember, the final decision does not belong to the internet, it belongs to the court.